How are we doing? Good afternoon, ladies and gents. Welcome to our regular Friday session. I'll be introducing it very, very shortly, but we are expecting a few more people. So if you could just bear with us for another minute or so, and then we'll get on with the introductions and the organisation and logistics for today. So just bear with us if you would be so very kind. Just give it another minute or so while we wait for more people to join us. Just let it tick round. People coming in all the time. Very welcome. Good afternoon to you all. Well, I think we'll make a start as it's 2 minutes past 12. And you've taken the trouble to get here on time. So thank you for that. So very good afternoon to you. My name is Andrew Carpenter. I am Chief Executive of the Structural Timber Association and also Chief Executive of Constructing Excellence in the Southwest and the Midlands. And I'm joined on these regular Friday sessions by my CE colleagues from around the UK and also from the CIOB to host these weekly Friday webinars, which are becoming increasingly popular. Delighted to say today I have Dr. Jens Hirsch with us. More of Jens later, but without further ado, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Howard Betts, who's going to take us through the rules and regulations for using Slido. Thank you, Howard.
Thank you, Andrew. Good afternoon to everyone. As usual, we will be using Slido. For those of you who are not familiar with Slido, you can access it one of two ways. You can use the QR code, perhaps through your smartphone, or you can go to computer and go to slido.com. You can enter today's code, which is LM290422. We're going to be using it in two ways. At the beginning, we're going to have a poll, and during the session, you'll be able to put answers for Jens in the Q&A, which is on Slido. So if you have a question, please tap it in there. If you want to own it, you can put your name with it. If not, you can remain anonymous. So the first question we're going to have is simply, are your buildings compatible with the EU sustainability regulations? So you have a choice of yes, you are, no, or unsure. So some of you have already completed the whole poll, but for those of you who haven't, I should continue. Do you even know how to measure this compatibility? So yes, no, or unsure. So Abraham will have the third question. Do you have the necessary data available? Yes, no, or unsure. And fourth question, do you have clear decarbonisation targets in place? And lastly, the fifth question, do you have a roadmap on how to achieve your targets, e.g. by retrofitting? So I can now ask if you could tap submit if you've completed. If you haven't, don't worry. This will remain open while Jens is speaking. So you can complete the poll during the next few minutes. Let me remind you, if you have any questions for Jens, please do put them in the Q&A in Slido. And I will remind you, at the end, we will ask for feedback. So this will again be through Slido. So your feedback would be really appreciated as this allows us to learn, make any changes, etc. So many thanks. I'm now going to pass back to Andrew.
Thank you, Howard, very much. So a little bit about today's session. About 6 weeks ago, I was down in Cannes for MIPIM. And one of the stands that I went on to was BuildingMinds. because it struck me that the agenda that they have around sustainability was exactly the same as I share with both my hats, with the Structural Timber Association and also with Constructing Excellence. In fact, there was total harmonization throughout my visit to MIPIM in terms of the climate crisis being the number one priority throughout the exhibitions and conferences, which was reassuring to know. So I visited the BuildingMinds stand, and I was very interested to hear what they had to say. And I thought it would make a very interesting and valuable topic for one of our Friday sessions, hence the invitation for Jens Hirsch to be with us here today. So Jens, I'm delighted that you've been able to take time out of your very busy diary to share your thoughts with us today. We're going to be talking about achieving decarbonisation, which when I was at COP26, 6 months ago now, I think the two top priorities for us in the UK, one was embodied carbon and the other was decarbonisation with retrofitting. So what you're going to tell us today, I'm sure will be very useful, very valuable. And I look forward to hearing what you have to say. So I'm going to mute myself. I'm going to turn my camera off and I'm going to hand over to you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Jens.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Howard. Thanks for the nice introduction. So my name is Jens Hirsch. Here I'm head of sustainability and scientific research at BuildingMinds. I will tell you a little bit more about BuildingMinds, the company, and our products in this hour. But I would like to start a little bit with the general issue that we are currently facing and what is the status quo of the real estate sector when it comes to decarbonization and digitalization especially. So Andrew just mentioned the terms embodied carbon and retrofit. So when it comes to new construction, of course, there's also embodied carbon, but also for retrofit measures. So retrofitting is not only reducing the operational carbon emissions of our buildings, but they also involve certain amounts of embodied carbon. So new materials have to be produced, old materials have to be disposed, and so on. Usually, so we are quite used to, when it comes to the financial perspective, we are used to consider also the initial investment and compare it with our operational monetary savings. Somehow we haven't been got used to this so far when it comes to embodied carbon, which is also like a kind of ecological investment when you're doing a retrofit measure. So, but let me start a little bit here. So the title of this talk today, BuildingMinds, the ESG platform with a plus. So I would like to give you an overview of what we are doing at BuildingMinds and why we consider us a little bit more than these ESG platforms that are out there focusing on smaller, narrow pieces of this entire journey that our sector is currently facing. One final word also on me and my background. So I was, before joining BuildingMinds 2 years ago, I was the project lead of the so-called Carbon Risk Real Estate Monitor project, or also shortly called CREM. I'm not sure if you are aware of it that much here. These questions that we talked about here at the beginning, the first question that was now with something about EU sustainability regulation. I initially wanted to call it EU taxonomy, and Andrew told me that it might not be clear what that is at all. So CREM was a initial research project, but that was finally adopted by the industry very, very well, and it's become kind of standard when it comes for defining the decarbonization requirements in terms of carbon intensity, kilogram CO2 per year per square meter for the real estate sector that is also recommended, for example, by the TCFD, which will become a obligatory reporting standard also in the UK in the future. So most of you will know these numbers. The real estate sector is responsible for a major share of the global energy consumption and carbon emissions. Only 1% of our buildings that we currently have are already compliant with net zero requirements, as we will need them in 2050. And yeah, new construction can only be one small piece to solve that problem, because 80% of the buildings that will stand in 2050 are already there today. They are already built. So new construction will not solve our problem, only partially, but we have to increase our retrofit efforts. So what is the challenge, and which questions didn't we really have and answer so far? So how to collect data, how to measure emissions at all. So most of you might be further ahead there, but a large share of the industry is still not collecting the necessary data that they need to assess at all whether their buildings meet any decarbonization requirements. Most of the companies have no clear view on their emissions, neither on their targets. And what is the current situation? Data is floating around, not harmonized within a company. Many ESG reporting standards are out there, and there's also risk, so-called stranding risk of not complying with future market expectations or with regulatory expectations. So in the UK, you are also quite at the front line here with the restriction of not allowing to rent out buildings with certain EPC, energy performance certificate grades anymore. And these things are approaching us in all countries currently. Finally, so even if you know where you are, what is the status quo of your buildings, how much do you have to reduce? And EPC does not tell you usually what to improve. It's usually a static snapshot of the building's performance if it's a consumption-based. If it's demand-based, it's just an estimation. All of you might know how much variety there is in the real consumption within individual EPC classes. So what is the current situation? Most of the data is either still on paper, on PDF, on Excel sheets, but you might know the problem. So our customers are large corporate real estate companies like BASF, for example, or large asset managers with thousands of buildings. So Excel has its limitations, of course, function-wise, but it's also about standardization and harmonization. So if once one person in the company starts changing anything in an Excel file, how can he ensure that everyone in the company will have the same Excel file then, and everything is always up to date? So that's why individual databases in companies might make sense, and they are an improvement, of course, for automatic data handling. So many people have their rejections against this. They're used to use Excel. It's easy to use, looks nice, and a database, if it's just an SQL database or any other kind, it's might be hard to use. So you need also some front end for such databases. And if it's your company internal database, you still cannot really communicate with it across companies. So if you want to, many of us know the situation. a new building is developed, a lot of data is gathered. Maybe there's even a BIM model, but then the building is sold to the first owner, or in case of transaction, I've been collecting data on the resource consumption, etc., of that building for many years. But the new owner will not be able to use that information if he has another kind of database and data structures. The same as with the Excel files. The column headers, they might mean something, but for someone else, they might mean something else. So that's why we are convinced, first of all, that you need digital data platforms that offer interactive dashboards and interactive access to the data within your company and on your buildings. And I will come back to that concept in a second. So let's go first to the first steps that we have to tackle. So what are the major roadblocks currently in harmonizing data and getting more out of the data that we have in order to improve the energetic and carbon performance of our buildings in the portfolio? So first of all, there is already a lot of data out there, but it's siloed in different locations, different Excel files, different paperworks, different databases maybe, but they are not together, and you cannot use the data in one database with that in another. You might use it, but very often you don't even know that it is there, which also reduces your efficiency of work, of course. And when it comes to efficiency, it's also about the data gathering and the processes for getting reports and analytics in place. Each year, companies have to do their sustainability reporting, and many of them, as we have noticed, start more or less from scratch from year to year. Peoples have changed. So it's data gathering again and again, starting to fill in Excel spreadsheets. Or you would love how many companies have no overview about the construction years, for example, of their buildings. So that's a data point where you would expect that is usually available, and maybe it has been collected sometimes in the past, but that Excel file, no one knows anymore where it is. Third major roadblock that we have here, the complex calculations. So previously in the past, maybe it was enough to have the energy consumption of your building for your reporting or for your internal analytics. But the situation has become more complicated. There are benchmarks out there where you have to benchmark your buildings against, like the CRREM pathways or other targets that have been defined. You have to calculate these carbon emissions with so-called emission factors. They, especially when it comes to electricity, they are changing over time. They are different in each country. There are different emission reporting approaches or calculation approaches, market-based emissions versus location-based emissions. You have to consider standards like the greenhouse gas protocol. So just to give you an overview about the complexity here. And finally, it comes to carbon savings and CapEx planning. So if you want to achieve certain targets, you might even have a budget, but how do you allocate these budgets on which measures at which point in time on which buildings? So defining a decarbonization roadmap is one of the most complicated things, I would say, for a large asset manager with a large portfolio. And there we are supporting our customers, and we regard ourselves here as kind of the missing link between effective sustainability measures that our customers have to develop, concrete decarbonization and action plans, and developing a digital action plan to break these data silos, to connect individual data points that are on different platforms or sensors, for example, available. So we try to provide the platform in the middle that allows you to get your data together and make more out of it. And this includes the very initial data collection. I will show you some examples later, and up to analytics of the data themselves, calculating carbon emissions, benchmarking, and finally setting up decarbonization roadmaps, assessing stranding risk, calculating carbon prices or carbon costs, and so on. So just one step back, BuildingMinds has been founded slightly earlier here, but we got to market in March 2019. Our founding partner is Schindler, the Swiss elevator company, and with Microsoft as a strategic partner based in Berlin. We've rapidly been growing the last 2 years with now around 100 industry data and ESG experts from over 30 nationalities. And so BuildingMinds is a cloud-based software as a service product that runs on Microsoft Azure services, which is also very important for our customers. Usually the servers are in Europe, which is relevant for their data protection policies, and our customers always keep full data ownership. So we have a role and access control management. So you can also define who is able to see what on the platform. So not everyone might, not everyone should maybe always see the entire portfolio or all kinds of information for individual buildings. So this can be defined quite well. So what makes BuildingMinds really unique finally? So besides this cloud-based SaaS, software as a service product, we have a large set of building and technology expertise. We have strong data protection standards according to very high EU standards in place. And especially one more thing, we are founding partner of the IBPDI, International Building Performance and Data Initiative. I've already mentioned that problem at the very beginning of data points not being exchangeable, because everyone uses different data structures, different definitions of individual data points. And that's why also a lot of data gets lost when building is, or after the development or after a transaction. So the idea of IBPDI was to define a common data model for the real estate sector that allows us to easily exchange data across company borders. So IBPDI's target here again, creating the data standard for real estate. And as you can see, we have already found 67, I think it's currently, companies that became a member of IBPDI. And we are trying to create a data standard around all aspects of the building. So across the entire building and portfolio life cycle, including market data, financials, project management, documentation, but also especially energy and resources. And finally, also including retrofit measures. So the data structure, the common data model, includes definitions of how to define a retrofit measure, on the impact of these retrofit measures, and also of embodied carbon. So what is the current situation? Again, here on the left side, existing fragmented systems with different levels. Things are not comparable. And IBPDI and its common data model for real estate tries to harmonize this data. So finding a common language to talk about the same things. So an energy consumption, or more precisely, the natural gas consumption in a certain building in a certain time period should be comparable, and everyone should know what it is if we're talking about that specific data point. So that's what the common data model is defining. And finally, the data model can be used to create different dashboards, applications, and analytics. And we at BuildingMinds, we have based our product on the CDM and are constantly proving how the CDM can be really flexibly used for different kinds of application. So I was talking about data, and we've noticed very early that getting data at all is one of the key challenges for our customers. That's why we have put special emphasis on that topic. Ideally, the data gets collected automatically. So we can connect via API to utility providers or to IoT sensors, to existing resource planning software, ERP, CAFM, etc., to any kind of external data platform that might be currently in use, as long as it has some API to connect with. Of course, besides this, you can just also take your data, export it to Excel and whatever. Our professional services team would help you in the onboarding process. And finally, I think there will be another slide more specifically later on, but there's CaptureX, our data collection app that helps you to crowdsource the data collection process within your specific company. One concept that I also want to mention here, it's a digital twin. So at the beginning, I mentioned that example of Excel spreadsheets. You do some change, and of course, your colleague, one office further, does not automatically have that change in his files, unless you are working in the cloud, but be sure someone will download the file and change something, and you will get a mess of versions. So the idea of the digital twin is to create one single source of truth for the data related to individual buildings and entire portfolios. So on the left, that's a situation without a digital twin, different stakeholders around the building, different kinds of data that they are sharing, we can call it a mess. So the idea with the digital twin is that everyone has access specifically defined for each stakeholder to the digital twin. So he can read, enter whatever his role allows from the digital twin, and it is guaranteed that what that person accesses is up to date. And of course, he can also see previous versions of the data. So the common data model at a glance, or as we also call it, the scary slide. So what looks so easy here on the right side, the digital twin. Of course, it's a complex data model with definitions for different, what we call entities in the common data model. So one entity is for resource consumptions for any kind. So let it be water, energy, waste. Another one is for carbon emission factors, embodied carbon factors, the building itself, its address. So it's a complex data model with relationships, linkages between the data points, but it's flexibly enough to cover also existing standards from various types. So it's not like just one new standard that competes with the existing ones, but the idea is to be like a meta model that allows the data or to communicate about and with data across different standards. That's why we have also included in the area measurement entity, for example, which is intended to store information about different areas within a building. So we have German and European standards, but also the IPMS standard from RICS, which might be more common in the UK. So, and finally, the idea and the beauty of this concept of having a digital twin and connecting it to existing digital services, including smart meter, IoT technologies. The beauty is it might be some integration effort upfront, but finally it allows you to use that data continuously and also for different purposes. So for your sustainability reports, you're reporting to different standards, be it INREF, EPRA, ECOR, CREM, GRESP, or any green building certificate, for example. So just an overview of different applications in the field of sustainability and real estate. So you want to have maybe real-time emission factors, develop a retrofit strategy, define a decarbonization roadmap, even AI-driven risk reduction plans. That's what everyone is dreaming of. But in order to get this, of course, you have to start the homework, get the data basic that you need for this, count your carbon, get your operational carbon footprint, including your tenant energy consumption. Evaluate the embodied carbon of your existing buildings, new construction, or retrofit measures, and constantly monitor your energy consumption. So not all data points can be automatically catched by any meter system, smart sensor, etc. So also in the future, there will be data points that have to be entered somewhere by people by hand. So, but also here we want to support our customers. And so what is the current process here? You as a sustainability manager, you need information about 100 or even more buildings in your portfolio. You just need one or maybe more data points, and you start writing emails, sending out Excel spreadsheets to be filled in. And then you have to get responses from some people. You might not get a response. You have to track that as well. And then you have to combine these things. Very often it's really working like this. With CaptureX, we want to streamline this process. So as a sustainability manager, you would not open Outlook, maybe to get the email addresses that you need, but you will not send emails. You will define what data points you want to know. So for these 50 buildings, you want to know the construction year or the gas consumption, electricity consumption from the last year. And you will know who can answer these questions. And then you can just assign each question to the corresponding person, send that out, that person gets a notification and can reject to answer. Hopefully he answers, or she. He can provide a comment, send it back to you, or forward it to a colleague because he knows that colleague knows the answer. I don't know it. You, as the initiator of that data survey, you will always know where the question currently lies. You will see that that message was forwarded, and next to you might directly ask that colleague who finally sent the answer to you. And you will see what share of your water-related questions has already been answered, which are still to be answered yet. And finally, having consolidated all the answers, you can push them to the BuildingMinds platform at a button. So coming back a little bit also to the beginning, the ESG platform with a plus. So we've been talking a lot about ESG now. So we have a different, quite comprehensive product here. So first of all, you have all your relevant energy consumption, carbon emissions, water consumption, etc. data at one place and can analyze them in interactive dashboards. I will show you some screenshots of the platform in a minute. Besides this, you can use that data for different reporting purposes. So if you're reporting to GRESP, we have set up, we are GRESP Premium Partner, we have just defined or set up the API. So the data that is already in our platform, you do not have to do anything for GRESP anymore specifically. So you do not have to fill in the GRESP asset level spreadsheet with all the energy consumption data of your buildings. We do this for you. So, or we send the data via API directly to GRESP. You see this, what will be sent to GRESP in our platform. Can check it again. It's all the data is validated and you can report to GRESP. Besides this, you can benchmark your buildings and your portfolio's performance against relevant standards like the CRREM Carbon Risk Real Estate Monitor. And finally, also understand the impact of the retrofits that you are planning to do. So let's have a quick look into the product itself. I've already mentioned this. So first of all, to structure this a little bit, of course, the platform provides you an overview of the status quo, how it is. So what are the past or the historic consumption values regarding electricity, green electricity, solar PV. We differentiate tenant electricity from your landlord electricity, renewables, solar thermal, and so on. The platform automatically calculates the carbon emissions, the operational carbon emissions of each building. And you see it here on the left, Europe, then the countries. You can structure this individually. So depending on what is selected there on the left, you will see the data for that specific subclass of your portfolio. Can drill down to regions, cities, sites, and individual buildings. But of course, you can also define your own custom structure for this based on your business development units, funds, or any other kind of company specific structure that is in place and that you might need for reporting purposes. And you, besides this, you will always get an overview of your data coverage. So which share of your required consumption data is available currently, which share has been estimated by you or with our support. So the data model, the CDM, allows you to clearly differentiate this. So it's not just one value for a building called gas consumption, but you can, or in a certain year, but you can be much more precisely there and differentiate, as already mentioned, who has procured that energy, landlord, tenant, unspecified if you don't know, and the accuracy of the data. Was it metered? Was it extrapolated? Was it estimated? And then second step. So I was talking about past historic status quo of your building's performance. So if we look ahead, there are these CRREM decarbonization requirements or your company internal decarbonization plans, and you can benchmark each building and the portfolio against these benchmarks. So here at the top left, we see the targets in orange dashed lines and the building's performance over the entire portfolio. Below this, you see the so-called share of stranded assets. So there you can already see which share of your buildings does not meet these targets anymore in a certain year. Or here on the right side, we will see the entire portfolio. Each dot or each bubble here is one building, and we can get a quite good overview which buildings do not meet their targets anymore, the red ones at the very top right. So there are energy targets defined here, carbon targets. They don't meet both of them. And you can check the trajectories of each building here over time quite well, which is a good, so regulation requires this from you to get an overview. But finally, what do we do this for? We want to identify the buildings with the highest need for action of refurbishing them, reducing their energy consumption and carbon emissions. Talking about carbon emissions, as mentioned before, we have also a carbon pricing simulator in place and will very soon also reflect the official regulatory carbon prices. But you can use this simulator in order to create different scenarios of carbon price and cost futures. I'm not really 100% sure about the situation in the UK. Maybe we can discuss about this in a minute in the Q&A section. But this tool allows you here to define your own trajectory of carbon costs. And finally, we offer also some dashboard here for individual analytics, where you can define just what data points do you want to assess in which year, what do you want to compare with each other, structured by country, by city, by region, by building type, or per portfolio as well. And finally, how do we improve our buildings? So we are now engineering company. So we enable our customers in planning their retrofits, checking the impact across buildings. We cannot say or tell you ourselves, but we have partners then that can do such analysis, like what is the optimal way of achieving your 2030 carbon targets in a certain building. So which measures should you take and what will they cost? And these results can be entered in our platform. So you can also do things like switching your energy, heating energy source from oil to gas to district heating or to a heat pump. Their BuildingMinds platform can automatically calculate your changed carbon emissions based on that different energy source. You can enter how much heat energy or electricity certain measures will save and how much you invest. And the platform will automatically calculate the related carbon savings for you. And then you can create your own scenarios and decarbonization plans. So you might know your budget, and then you can create different scenarios. Let's do something with building A. Let's choose the retrofit variant B that my engineers have defined for a second building, and create your own retrofit scenario plans. Compare them with each other. Are they within your portfolio? Are within your budget? Are they enough to meet your decarbonization plans for the future? And here we see a little bit also what goes beyond ESG. So besides covering a very wide range of functions within the ESG aspect, as mentioned earlier, we have also customers like BASF from the corporate real estate management side. So they can manage their lease contracts in our platform, monitor their performance and costs within the buildings. They can use the platform for space optimization and also occupancy measurement. So you might see at the very bottom right here, if available, you can have a 3D model of the building in the platform. You can zoom into individual floors. That building here we have equipped it with hundreds of sensors that not only measure electricity consumption, but also the occupancy in individual floors. So the common data model doesn't stop at the building level, but it goes down to individual equipment items, spaces, documents, and so on that can be linked with each other. And we measure with these sensors in that building air quality, so CO2 concentration, humidity, but also lighting, temperature, and all that data is in near real time available in the platform. So I can log in and check what is the temperature in a certain room or CO2 concentration based on data that is sent each 15 minutes to the platform. And besides this, you can also use it for the BuildingMinds platform for strategic location and portfolio management. So these corporate real estate management use cases are also there. So thanks a lot. Thanks for your patience. And here's the contact of my colleague Otavia that Andrew mentioned at the beginning, our Sales Lead International, or of course, also feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. But I hope we can clarify already some questions right now.
Thank you, Jens, very much. Thank you. Very detailed. So thank you for what I thought we'd do first of all, just very briefly, if we could, is ask Abraham to put the results up of the survey that we did earlier, and let's see if there's any surprises. So are your buildings compatible with EU sustainability regulations? What was the answer on that one? Unsure. You see, that's not surprising to me, Jens. What about yourself?
Yeah, that's why we discussed at the beginning. Should we
Yes.
have, besides yes and no, also an unsure?
Indeed. I'm glad we put that in.
That one would win. Yes, so maybe less relevant for you here, but also for the EU market participants, the answer would not be very different. I'm
okay. Oh, that's interesting to know. Let's have a look at question 2 then, Abraham, can we? Do you even know how to measure this compatibility? Again, no surprises there, I would think. Only 1 in 5 know how to do this. 3 in 5 don't. So no surprises. And do you have access? Again, it's most people unsure. Nobody has the data. So plenty for you to go at, Jens, I would suggest there.
Yeah.
What about number 4? Do you have clear decarbonisation targets? Now that's slightly better to know, isn't it? That the majority do.
Here it would be really interesting for me to hear a little bit from the audience. Which kind of decarbonization targets? How have they been defined, or have you been adopting these CRREM pathways that might have originated in an EU research project, but it was adopted very well also, not just bank investment management and others.
Let me say, Jens, if there's anyone in the audience that would like to come on and speak to Jens, if you'd like to pop your name down in the chat box, we'll get Abraham and Howard to bring you in, and maybe we can have a bit of a conversation on the call. Yeah. So if anyone's prepared to put their head above the turret, please just pop your details down in the chat box. And the final thing is, do you have a roadmap? Well, unfortunately, most don't. 9% do. So that's probably one person, isn't it, in the 11 that have responded. So there we are. So while we're waiting, we have got a question which has come in the Slido. I've only got one question, so if there's any more questions, ladies and gents, please do put them in the Slido now. And again, if you're prepared to come on and talk to Jens to answer the question he's just asked, just put your details down in the chat box and we'll get Abraham to bring you in. But the question we have so far, you report that 80% of buildings by 2050 already exist with only 1% sustainably compliant. How much could retrofitting improve this situation? And secondly, is it likely?
Yeah, I'm sometimes a little bit afraid how unlikely it might be that we really make it. So I've this CRREM pathways that I've mentioned before, there is a set of targets for limiting global warming to 2 degrees, and there's another one for achieving the more ambitious Paris target of limiting global warming to 1.5 degree. If you look at these targets, many people ask me, Jens, how shall we achieve this? This will be very tough. And I can just answer them, yes, it is very tough to achieve 1.5 degree. And it might be something where the industry fails because it's just in 2022 really starting to get that problem to start with it. So many people still think that new construction will solve our problems because the newly built buildings might have a very low energy consumption, but they completely forget the embodied carbon. And yes, I think retrofitting is the most important key here in order to achieve our targets. So as mentioned, most of the buildings are already there that will exist in 2050. So there's no other solution. And maybe not all the technologies are already available right now that we will need here. So better heat pumps, better technologies for energy storage, and new, better efficiency for solar panels. So don't forget that, which improvements have been made there in the last 10, 15 years. So this could be a game changer.
Is there, I haven't got any more questions on Slido, but I'd just like to ask a supplementary question in terms of asking you if there's any best practice that we here in the UK could or should take from Europe in terms of what you're doing. Because despite the fact of Brexit, I think we still, from an intellectual point of view, are able to share knowledge.
I'm sure we are able to share knowledge. But so you are a country that is very experienced in energy performance measurements and improvements. So I think the old joke of single glazed windows in Britain, I'm sure you have improved there as well. Maybe some old existing buildings.
Do you know, I didn't even know that was a joke. You taught me something today.
I wasn't aware. I'm not sure. So you might have a little bit more mild climate conditions. So the insulation in winter might be less important than in Central Europe. But you have the Better Buildings Partnership and others. So you have public registers of energy performance certificates that allows comparability and benchmarking of your own buildings. So that are very good approaches. So one of the next steps, so you left the EU right before one major big thing happened. That was the EU Green Deal, the so-called EU taxonomy on sustainable activities or economic activities. So, and our European SFDR, so the Sustainable Financial Disclosure Regulation. So EU wants to stop greenwashing and defining clear rules on what is a sustainable building, a sustainable fund, or any kind of sustainable economic activity. That's this so-called taxonomy. And they've set out quite large set of rules now taking place step by step. And in order to be comparable, compatible, and to still exchange data, buildings, just to make things comparable, something similar will take place in the UK as well. And I've been recently part of a working group, including INREF and many other industry groups that address the FCA. I've learned previously from Andrew or Howard, it was the Financial Controlling Authority, and also TCFD, which become a standard in the UK, mandatory. And we supported them advising a little bit in defining ESG metrics that are not contradicting with the ones used in the EU, including the use of these carbon risk real estate monitor pathways as a kind of standard in this sector, because European banks or asset managers, they might want to buy a building from some UK owner. They want to benchmark it against similar targets. So in some situations, it just makes no sense there to do your own things.
I've got a question from Howard, my colleague, in the chat box, which you can probably read for yourself. But the issue here for me, says Howard, is how do you get construction sector to engage in turning data into action? And this is something which Howard and I have experienced over the last 2 years. We've covered a lot of very important topics in this session, but it's how do we turn that knowledge and data and information into action within the sector? And I just wondered if you've got any advice you could offer us.
Yeah, first of all, I think it's the ease of using the data and transparency and clarity. So I've noticed this a lot, discussing with our customers. They have no clear guidance. They don't know where they are. They don't know where to go. They don't know which measures to take. So under uncertainty, what do? Nothing, or the wrong things. So as soon as I have a reliable analyst consultant who can tell me, do this and that measures and the building, it will cost that amount of money, and it will help you to achieve these targets that you have defined based on your platform and international standards, then these people will take action. But of course, I'm not sure in the UK, but we need the workforce as well. So also supporting the owners in getting this workforce, in getting the materials, heat pumps, and people are able to install a heat pump.
Well, that's what we're very short of both at the moment, heat pumps and the skilled labor to install them. And I'm sure it's no different with you, is it?
No, it's very similar here.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we as the industry, standardization, that's one of the answers. Or just talked with someone yesterday, a project from the Netherlands. They are doing modularized retrofitting a multifamily building within 48 hours to net zero standard, while people living there with prefabricated, pre-measured materials. I'm not sure how much marketing that was, but it felt like it is a possibility, and this might solve it. So do the retrofit in months or do it in 2 days. What that saves also the workforce, not the heat pumps, unfortunately.
No. Jens, thank you so much. There are no more questions in the system. So can I thank you very much for your time and sharing of your knowledge. There is an exit poll, which we would like you to fill in. But first of all, before we do that, let's go to the MyProPass slide then, Abraham. So if you'd like a CPD certificate, all you have to do is go to mypropass.co.uk, create your free account, and then the certificates come automatically. So that's the good news on the CPD. Next week, we're looking at transforming your structural timber and steelworks workflows with Chris Hobbs from Autodesk. So talking about steelwork, talking about structural timber and automatic fabrication creation. So that's another interesting topic for next week. I hope you'll come and join us. If we could ask you, as I say, is there a slide on the survey? Yes, I'm sure there is. Slido.com. There's the hashtag LM290422. Before you go, ladies and gents, if you wouldn't mind just filling that in, that would be super. So just leaves me now to thank Howard and Abraham from Leaders Meets for so ably hosting us today. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. I hope you found the last hour valuable. I'm sure you did. And finally, another thank you to you, Jens, for giving up your valuable time. Thank you very much. Have a lovely afternoon. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you.